Welcome to In Focus. I'm Karim Hatem. The conflict in Gaza has exposed sharp divisions between Prime Minister Netanyahu's government and the military, with disagreements over strategy and post-conflict governance, raising critical questions about Israel's policies. Meanwhile, President-elect Donald Trump's cabinet appointments signal a mix of loyalty and controversy, with implications for U.S. domestic and foreign policy. Let's start with tensions in Gaza. Time magazine recently raised an important question, namely, does North Gaza reveal Israel's endgame? This headline sheds light on a senior Israeli military officer remarks about the removal of Palestinian civilians from northern Gaza, raising critical concerns about Israel's long-term intentions in the region. The article explores fears of potential annexation and resettlement, as well as the humanitarian implications of restricting aid to displaced populations. This issue is deeply intertwined with the broader strategy or lack thereof articulated by Israeli leaders. As the situation unfolds, it forces us to question whether this marks a shift towards permanent military presence and settlements despite international scrutiny and legal challenges. The uncertainty surrounding this endgame continues to cost lives and shape the future of Gaza. To unpack these complexities, we are joined now by Dr. Sohail Diab, a professor of political science and expert in Israeli affairs. Welcome. Now, Dr. Sohail, what do you think of the growing discord between Netanyahu's government and the Israeli military leadership, and what are the reasons behind it?
Greetings, everybody. In fact, the disagreements between the military side and the political one are not really something new. They didn't start out after the 7th of October, but they in fact started way before that, specifically after the discussion that happened, or specifically after the issues that happened inside Israel after the judicial coup took place. In fact, as well, the military had a very clear stance. They expressed that any coup in the judiciary, in the Israeli judiciary, is going to undermine the interests of the Israeli state and its consolidation. And as well, we have seen how in March 2023, Netanyahu dismissed Gallant a few months before the 7th of October actually happened. And so, for that matter, I'm trying to just prove to you that these disagreements date way back, and they started out before the flood of Al-Aqsa took place. But this can be attributed to four main points. Who's who's responsible for the 7th of October? Is it the political side or the military side? And who actually gave a chance for that to happen in the first place? What we can see in Israel, inside Israel, is that there's a lot of name calling and finger pointing. You know, sometimes accusations are just thrown at the Mossad, at the Shabak, and at security agencies. And that's what Netanyahu does. And he just wants to exempt himself from any responsibility regarding the 7th of October. The other point I would like to shed light on is how the war was going on in Gaza before the Israelis went or attacked Lebanon. And there was a discord between Gallant and Netanyahu managed to do an incursion into Gaza, and then came the subject of Rafah and the colonization of the Philadelphia corridor. In fact, a lot of skirmishes were happening inside Israel between the political arena and the military arena regarding these subjects. And there's another issue right now that's stirring a lot of disagreements inside Israel. There are a lot of subjects here, including, for instance, the conscription of the Haredi Jews into the Israeli army. In fact, this specific subject is causing a lot of tumultuous skirmishes inside Israel. The other point is actually now political, and it has two sides. The first side is the relationship between Israel and the United States, and the military of Israel just wants to maintain connections with the United States. But the military arena, the military side inside Israel just wants to shed or keep shedding light on the discord with the United States. The political side in Israel wants to impose full control over Gaza and to even establish permanent settlements inside the Gaza Strip. And today, the Minister of Finance, the Israeli Minister of Finance, stated that it is necessary for a military rule to take place inside Gaza. And in fact, this is going to be less costly than the war when it comes to the Israeli public budget.
That takes us to the next question, Doctor. Now, you've mentioned your 4 points on the reasons behind the divisions between Netanyahu's government and the military. 3 of them are domestic reasons, and the 4th is kind of an external reason, which is concerned with its relationship, or Israel's relationship, with the United States. Now, how can all this conclude in the military's view of Netanyahu's goals in Gaza, specifically when we're talking about feasibility here?
In fact, the central question that was asked today, yesterday, and the day before has to do with the deliberations between Israel and the Lebanese side regarding reaching a settlement or some kind of a rapprochement. And, specifically after Hochstein expressed that he's going to visit the region. But in fact, this specific subject answers your question, and your question is very important and compound. In fact, right now there's a pivotal question. Why does Netanyahu want rapprochement in Lebanon, but does not want rapprochement or any kind of rapprochement in Gaza? A lot of journalists and news media in Israel speak about this specific enigma. And right now, why didn't Netanyahu terminate the Gaza subject first and just went right away into Lebanon, specifically that there is a pending case regarding Israeli hostages that are captivated in Gaza. You know, it was only logical for Netanyahu to prioritize the termination or resolution of the Gaza subject. And in fact, the answer to that question was not really clear to a lot of Israeli elites, including the highly fragmented Israeli opposition. In fact, the opposition does not have an alternative policy regarding these decisive subjects. And the answer is as follows, in my opinion. Netanyahu perceives that the war on Gaza is an existential war that has two sides, an existential side for the person of Netanyahu and his political future and the future of his coalition. And the second aspect to this existential war taking place in Gaza is his war to terminate and liquidate the Palestinian cause completely, and to just erase it altogether and omit it altogether from the international community agenda. Meaning that Netanyahu perceives the Gaza war as a prolonged one that he wishes to elongate further and further. And he perceives that the war in Lebanon, on the other hand, is a war that has some security goals and military objectives that directly affect the Israeli settlers that got displaced of Lebanon with some strict conditions. And this is actually what Hochstein is doing right now. And, you know, he is coming to the Middle East because Hoxie is coming to the Middle East because of two things. First, he thinks that the existence of two Israeli fronts and or two parallel battles that Israel is waging simultaneously is something costly for Israel. And so they have to pick one battle over the other, either Gaza or Lebanon. And the other thing
he hasn't
is
mentioned Gaza in his previous statements that he stated in Beirut after his negotiations with Nabih Berri lately. Do you think that implicates anything, considering what you were talking about?
In my viewpoint, the American side wants some kind of rapprochement, and they want to do something to pacify the situation. In fact, there is a consensus between all American, across all American parties, that there has to be some kind of passivity inside of, or pacifism inside of Lebanon. And as well, they want to achieve the same peace in Gaza, but this is something that Netanyahu is not on board with. In fact, Netanyahu understands very well that he might get prosecuted and might even get imprisoned, not just because of his corruption accusations, but also because of the recent clandestine leakages that were disseminated recently, which could in fact accuse Netanyahu of high treason to the Israeli state. And for that matter, we can perceive that the US is trying to mediate in order to bring some kind of rapprochement in these sides. or on these fronts. But Netanyahu,
Right.
in fact, wants to prolong the Gaza conflict, even if some kind of an agreement took place in
Right.
Lebanon.
Unfortunately, I'm out of time. Thank you very much, Dr. Suhail Diab, Professor of Political Science and expert in Israeli affairs. Now we shift to the United States, where President-elect Donald Trump has been picking his cabinet members, and his appointments are sparking debates about their potential impact on both domestic policy and international relations.
We can fix every single problem our country faces and lead America, and indeed the whole world. USA! This is a magnificent victory for the American people. Promises made, promises kept. We're going to keep our promises. Nothing will stop me from keeping my word to you, the people. We will make America safe, strong, prosperous, powerful, and free again.
Politico highlighted in their recent article that even Republicans are criticizing Trump's appointment of Matt Gaetz as Attorney General, with one senior Republican calling it an absolute gut punch. This selection, along with others like Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense and Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence, has raised serious concerns about the direction of Trump's second term. What started as seemingly perhaps normal picks like Marco Rubio for Secretary of State and Susie Wiles as Chief of Staff has quickly shifted into some of the appointments that many in Washington and even within Trump's own party, the Republican Party, find alarming. According to Politico, Trump is, by making these selections, daring the U.S. Senate to oppose his picks, which could potentially lead to a constitutional showdown. This story underscores the tension between loyalty and qualifications in Trump's choices and the uncertainty surrounding his approach to governance in his second term. To analyze this, we are joined now by Dr. Frank Musmar, an academic and political analyst. Welcome. Now, how do you reflect on Trump's choices right now for his second term?
Thanks for having me. Mr. Trump is well known to apply his promises. You know, we witnessed that in his first term, and most likely he's going to do the same in his term. So if you look, that he started in a few files, and then of course he has to hire the rest of the cabinet. But if you look that from the beginning, he started with hiring Mr. Tom, as a border czar. So he was trying to talk to American people to make him see that yes, he is working to work on the problems one at a time. So definitely, yes, he will have some choices that people approve. Some will have questions about it, but I don't think it's going to be a conflict. No.
Let me start with some of the very controversial picks. Now, Matt Gaetz as Attorney General, what impact might his appointment have on the Department of Justice?
Second, like for all those controversial stories, it was just accusations that never reached the point of being a verdict or being an accused person of having issues with the law. So I do remember that I was reading yesterday that the case that was targeted against him, according to him and according to Donald Trump, that it's been closed. So, okay, the point is, I think Trump tried to use him because he had an experience with the law that, according to the Republican Party, they're trying to claim that, politicizing and weaponizing the law system in the United States. So maybe he's the one that he was experienced at, that he will be a good pick to fight these kind of organizations. I think that was the main idea for Mr. Trump to hire him. Now, for the House and Senate majority, most of them they've been hired, let's say, for the Senate in the last 2 years, and now for the full cycle that happened with this election. Most of them they've been working with a good rhythm with Donald Trump. Actually, he helped them big time, winning. For the House, I think they have good majority in the House. I don't see a challenge. If there is a person too might discuss that, I think at the voting level is gonna pass.
All right, let's talk about the Secretary of State. Now, obviously, there are very important issues when it comes to foreign policy for the US and for Donald Trump, as he promised many, he stated many promises in his second term. How could Marco Rubio implement his promises regarding foreign policy?
Well, Marco Rubio, I think he was one of the best pick, and I don't think there is any discussions about this man here in the United States. He served for a long time in the Congress, in the international committees, and he knows exactly what's going on in the world. I think it was a good pick. The guy has a good experience. Beside the point, people sometimes pick on some comments from people, from politicians here and there. It does not mean that will, I will say, uh, that will be the main borders of his policies. But some comments here and there, based on the war in Gaza and Israel and yeah, at the level of Russia and Ukraine, yeah, I don't think that's enough to judge the man. But I think the man is very qualified. I think he will be very good in handling those two files. Most likely, Donald Trump is working on sort of economic diplomacy somehow with a full agenda in the Middle East. What's going to happen after the ceasefire is not just the ceasefire. So what's next? Who's going to rule the area? What kind of progress and rebuilding and reconstruction of Gaza, as an example. And in the meantime, for Russia and for Ukraine, yeah, it's very obvious that there is a plan somehow, maybe with a Biden decision, trying to push the troops backwards. So we'll have a better resolution with Russia, so it doesn't have too much lands. So it's very, very obvious that both parties are working together somehow in the foreign policy. And there is a plan. I think Mr. Trump already communicated with Mr. Rubio. I think he will be the best man to handle that fight.
But he hasn't got much experience when it comes to foreign policy, does he? I mean, yes, he's been a senior senator for many years, but does that really qualify him to become Secretary of State in light of the current developments in international relations?
Well, definitely yes. And if we look actually at the cabinet that we have now, and I heard there is some criticism about a few people that Mr. Trump is choosing, but as an example, the head of the Department of Health, as an example, in the United States, now he's a lawyer. So people were criticizing the
Well,
pick
that
of
was going to be my next question.
Yes, well, that's what I'm trying to say. So people sometimes, because we are living this incident, is new, and people looking at it, trying to look and analyze what's going to happen. But in my opinion, Mr. Rubio is very qualified,
Okay,
and every
let's
single
talk about.
resolution in the United States, it
Okay,
comes
let's
from the
talk about the
Congress. Go ahead, go ahead.
qualifications that you've just mentioned about, the health department and Mr. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. What do you think of that appointment or that selection? Because it's probably confronted the most criticism in the past few days, hasn't it?
Well, it does, and I think yeah, that's the point. That the criticism normally it comes, which is normally for like new appointees, because people don't know them. They're trying to look at the files, which is very normal. But as I'm saying, as an example, as what I told you, actually the sitting one now is a lawyer. He's not even like a doctor. So the point is like who has more experience in the field, and maybe he has like
It's
more
not just that he's a
background in it.
lawyer. He also has very controversial opinions regarding health issues.
No, I was talking about the sitting one is a lawyer.
No,
I'm
I'm
not talking
talking
about
about
Mr. Kennedy. Okay, now,
yes,
yeah, yeah,
but I'm
yeah.
talking
Mr.
about
Kennedy.
it's not just about that he's not really experienced in some sort in any field. He's had controversial opinions about public health.
Well, and okay, I understand, but the man has been working on those files for a very long time. Do he has an experience in him? He does. Now, the point when you're talking about the healthcare system in the United States and its attachment to the insurance corporations and to the law and justice,
All right.
those are very, very big
Right, because
attachment.
I'm out of
Corporations, they're
time.
not going
I'm
to be
out of
happy
time,
if
but I
I'm
need to
listening to
ask
you.
you just one last question because Pete Hegseth is also a very controversial pick. What do you think of that for Secretary of Defense, of
I
course?
think I the main controversial point that people are trying to highlight is his criticism about using the women in a combat line. Now, of
Mhm.
course, media sometimes doesn't is not honest in bringing the information in a good way. He is not against, or he did not say he's against women to be in the army. He said he's against them to be in the combat line. So the point is, okay, now we could criticize the man, but if that's an idea that we will be like a better off if we apply it, let's try it. You know, why not? Why we have to stay always in the same classic way? So if there is some ideas that is going to be beneficial, why not? So why we just jump to the conclusion and we just want to
Well, we're not
criticize an
jumping to
idea?
conclusion. We're just trying to understand the selections based on the qualifications. And thank you very much, Dr. Musmar, for breaking down the implications of these appointments. Definitely the next chapter of US politics is going to be very controversial and complex as ever, and that's perhaps the nature of Donald Trump. That wraps up our episode for today for In Focus. Thank you for watching. I'm Karim Hatem. Good night.